team, actually trained a great deal, Ken Mattingly, because he was going to go to a flight, wasn't he?
He perhaps is one of the most dedicated of the astronauts here. He worked very hard on Apollo 13, and it was quite a blow to him just 2 days before our launch to be changed out because we thought he might come down with the measles. And now I'm very happy to see 2 years later that he is finally on board that spacecraft, and in a moment of less than an hour, he'll be on his way.
What kind of person is he? I mean, you must know him much better than most people, having spent almost more time with him than with your family.
Well, he, again, is dedicated. He's a very serious, thoughtful individual. He is very meticulous to details, and he knows the command module very thoroughly. He was the person that got this Hicon camera on our flight, which we now, of course, have bigger cameras in our sim bay. And so he is quite an enthusiastic spaceman.
Yes, he's supposed to be somewhat of an authority on the command module itself.
That's right, yes, he is.
Yeah. What is, talking about the command module, what's happening inside that command module at this precise moment? What does it feel like?
Well, actually, it's a little bit different than we feel out here on the ground because we have a professional person narrate what is happening every moment, building up the tension. Actually, in the spacecraft, things are rather relaxed, and sometimes there's really not that much to do, and the crew occasionally looks at the watch to find out just exactly how much time they have left before the engines are ignited.
Because it's dark in there, isn't it? No, mainly?
No, well, the lights are on. It's very comfortable, cool. The air conditioning is running, and actually it's sort of a tranquil experience, and everybody has their fingers crossed, hoping that it will finally lift off and the months of preparation will bear fruit.
I remember once before your flight, in fact, no, before the flight of Apollo 8, I asked you what it felt like at that last moment, and you said, very casually, I thought, well, when it happens, the engines rumble up, the restraining arms go down, and you're either going to go or you're not going to go. Is it really that cool?
Yes, well, of course, you know, the crew is always worried that something will happen just before the flight that will postpone the flight, and after all these months of preparations, they don't want that. So once the engines are ignited and the hold-on arms go away, the vehicle lifts off, then it's on its way. I mean, there's no more holding back now. Something's going to happen. Either it's going to go into orbit, or we'll have a problem.
This mission, of course, is very much more scientifically oriented. There's a lot more scientific equipment on board than there was on, say, Apollo 13. Why was this kind of mission not flown sooner? I mean, is it not just a matter of carrying the gear?
Well, no, we had to build up to this. We had to develop the transportation system first. So starting with Apollo 15, we have the maximum amount of science aboard. We could carry more payload into lunar orbit, into lunar landing. So you'll see on these last three flights, 15, 16, and 17, most of our scientific return from our Apollo program will be on these three flights.
In fact, this is 1/3 of about 90% of all the stuff you're going to get.
That's right. We're going to get quite a bit of lunar material back from this flight, and by the time the program ends, we'll have something like 500 pounds of lunar material aboard.
Which is good for a while.
Well, it's good for our hope until we go back to the moon, which we don't know exactly when.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that later. Before I do, however, what would you say was the part of the scientific program that would suffer most if Apollo 16 doesn't make it, if they have a minor problem like you did?
Well, there's two areas. Number one, they're going to put up some more scientific experiments that will be left there after they come home. This puts a net up, for instance, of the seismic instruments, the magnetic instruments, and they'll increase this net that we'll have on the moon after they come home. That'll be one thing that we'll lose. And second, of course, they're going to a very interesting old highland area, which perhaps has some volcanism, and we would like to get material back from there, which would give us a greater picture of the moon. And that, of course, is our prime objective, and we'd lose that if they didn't land.
Yes. You were saying just before that particular remark about when America would go back to the moon. I was talking to Dave Scott not too long ago, and he said that his best guess was the enormous number of 15 years after the end of Apollo. How would you see that?
Well, I think his guess is perhaps as good as any. What we're doing now after our lunar flights is to look back at the Earth and try to build up our capability of Earth resources so that we can perhaps get a quicker return on our space investment for the people back here on the Earth.
Yes. Well, thank you very much indeed, Jim Lovell.
My pleasure.
Now, of course, with Apollo 16's countdown going according to plan at this time, there are only 3 people who've ever done what they're going to do this time. The crew of Apollo 15, 3 men who took a lunar roving vehicle down to the moon. I talked to the commander of that flight, Dave Scott, about what it was like, how exciting it was when he got out down there on the edge of Hadley Rill, in among the mountains, in the Apennine Mountains.
All recovery forces are on station and ready to support the launch of Apollo 16. Also, the Manned Spaceflight Network has indicated they are ready to support. And earlier problem with the power out on a switching station in Monroe
just going to do a recording, quick recording. Are we ready for the recording? For what? Recording. Okay. I will ident it at the front, yes? All right, this is James Burke on the Unilateral Link doing a recorded piece for the BBC One introduction to the coverage from Cape Kennedy. That piece follows 5 seconds from now. And with the countdown of Apollo 16, America's penultimate mission to the moon, just about 8 minutes to go, we welcome BBC One viewers to Cape Kennedy. So far here, everything looks absolutely great for a launch at 6 minutes to the hour. The crew, Commander John Young, Lunar Module Pilot Charlie Duke, and Command Module Pilot Ken Mattingly, are going through the last-minute checks up there in the Command Module at the top of the Saturn V. The very last of the general status checks are being completed in the firing room as I speak now. The atmosphere here at Cape Kennedy today is more tense than I've ever seen it before. With only 2 Apollo flights left, if Apollo 16 fails, with 17 already targeted to another and equally important site, then a great deal of the vital information that the NASA scientists are looking for will be irrevocably lost for perhaps up to 15 years. That's the latest guess from no less than Dave Scott, commander of Apollo 15 himself, on how long it will be before America goes back to the moon. Now, more hangs on this launch in some ways than on any before, and with so many critical maneuvers to go through before the mission itself can be called a complete success, a great deal hangs on how good the crew themselves are. That's the end of the piece. Right.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control. We're at T-minus 14 minutes, 59 seconds, and counting. Scheduled at this time are some Mission Control Center updates to the computer clock aboard the command module. This is actually synchronizing the spacecraft timing system with that in the Mission Control Center. Also, the command module pilot, Ken Mattingly, has been giving readouts on the service module quadrants. These are giving temperatures, pressures, and fuel quantities. A short time ago, the S2 start tank chill down began. This is chilling that system to prepare it to accept the extremely cold liquid hydrogen. Computer checks are underway also at this time. A check going on is the check of the vehicle digital computer to be sure that it's in the prepare to launch mode. Several of these computer checks are run during the count to ensure proper communications between the computers in the Launch Control Center and the mobile launcher, and also to ensure they're in the correct mode. Countdown continuing now, passing the T-minus 14-minute mark. This is Kennedy Launch Control.
End of And this mission will be heading, hopefully, to bring back even more than the amount of rocks that Dave Scott so happily brought back on Apollo 15. And as we sit here, you can see one of the cameras, one of the technical cameras used by NASA to observe many parts of the spacecraft and the area. There are, in fact, 60 of them. And the little number you may see up there, 026, is number 26. They have 60 separate cameras watching everything, including the firing room, which you're looking at now, where everybody is extremely tense, getting ready for the launch. I talk to people that work in there, and they themselves say, of course, that they don't look out of the window at the rocket. They're not interested in the rocket. The real beauty of the launch lies in what happens when those engines you're looking down on now fire and the figures appear on the computer screen. A view there of camera AA2, one of the 60, looking straight down rocket. You can see the venting there. Now we switch to camera 37 at the base of the rocket, looking at one of those enormous F1 rockets that belch out 3 tons of fuel a second on launch, take the now almost traditional 8.9 seconds to get up to full power. There's a very unusual view. You can see at the bottom right-hand side the top of the command module, and at the left-hand side the top of the gantry, the service gantry, and you can see that gap between the two. The service arms draw back after the crew are in to 15 feet until just a few minutes before launch itself, when of course they clear right out and the rocket goes up, and then thousands and thousands of tons of water are pumped out through a lot of the pipes that you can see. You can't see it there, in fact, because the rocket's hiding it, but just behind there's that gantry that I was talking about. It has fuel lines, of course, topping up the liquid oxygen, and you can see it boiling off there in the heat. It also has these lines for water, which of course has to be sprayed onto the pad. I think it's something like 40,000 gallons a minute to stop the pad from just being incinerated by the flame. I believe the flame there goes up to something like 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty hot when it goes. And the news at the moment here, which I can hear with my half ear listening to what's going on outside, is that the countdown is proceeding according to schedule. The gyro problem that I was talking about before doesn't seem to be giving any more problems. Nobody said anything about it. Just over 10 minutes to go. And what you're having a quick look at now are the recorded pictures of the crew having breakfast there. They had steak and eggs, but we heard that the people in attendance, Deke Slayton, the man who trains them, of course, and the security officer and the backup crew, Brucer and Mitchell, only managed to have bacon and eggs. They didn't obviously have enough steak and eggs. This is a traditional scene. It's really nothing more than a final good luck from people like Deke Slayton and the backup crew, unless, of course, something does happen on the way to the site, in which case it's a question of a last-minute replacement at a much more short interval than Mattingly was replaced when he got the measles on Apollo 13. But essentially, it's a sort of tradition. The breakfast, of course, is traditional in more ways than one. The steak and eggs they have is so that when they get into their suits and get up into launch, they've got a very high protein and low carbohydrate diet. So once those suits go on, and you can see the suiting up procedure, the business of actually going to the laboratory becomes really something of fairly major importance. That's why they eat this very high protein breakfast, very, very low on residuals. The suiting up happened this morning, and as did the breakfast, and both things happened absolutely on time. This launch, right through to minor details like who puts in what plug at what time on the suit, has gone absolutely according to plan. That suiting happened at 8:54 local time here. That would be 6 minutes to 3 London time. Not too long after that, the crew leave the MSOB, as it's called, and move out, as they did, in fact, on time to the launch pad of Apollo 16. Okay, Tim.
Houston flight has also indicated that they are go for the automatic sequencer. At the T-minus 3 minute 7 second mark, the launch will go on the automatic sequencer, and from that point on, the launch will be automatically handled by the sequencer. Coming up on the T-minus 5 minute and 30 second mark, at that time we'll be standing by for a go to launch from Mission Director Chet Lee. Mission Director verifies go for launch. Mission Director Chet Lee from Houston verifies go for launch. All elements now reporting into Test Supervisor Gordon Turner that they are go for launch. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. This is Kennedy Launch Control.
And up. And with 4 minutes and 37 seconds to go to launch on Apollo 16, the countdown continues to proceed absolutely perfectly.
32 seconds and counting, and swing arm number 9 is now swinging back to the full retract position.
We're just hearing that the swing arm is hauling right back away from the rocket, ready for launch.
Leading off these final positions, preparation for launch. As we approach the final minutes here, we'll go into a relatively silent period as far as reporting goes. The launch team indicates that they will have only negative reporting. If there's a problem only, will they come up on the air at this time. Now T-minus 4 minutes, 3 seconds and counting. This is Kennedy Launch Control.
And at this point, of course, that the Department of Defense people come into their own. The helicopters, the ships, the salvage craft, the fire crews, the radar technicians, the swimmers with their special suits, new ones, different kinds of wetsuits in case the crew do have to go down into the ocean just after launch.
3 astronauts, and said that the Apollo 16 launch team wishes them good luck and Godspeed. They all replied thank you, and we're now have a quiet circuit as they switch over to the Astrocom circuit. We're now T-minus 3 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. We're approaching the time when the countdown goes on the terminal sequencer. The sequencer commands a variety of functions, all of which must occur in the proper sequence for the count to continue. Also here in the control center, the people will continue to monitor what are called the red line values to ensure that everything is go for launch. The instrument unit light, panel light now on the status board indicates instrument unit ready, spacecraft ready, emergency detection system ready. We've passed the 2 minute 50 second mark, and we're now on the terminal sequencer. The terminal sequencer has started. This terminal sequencer will pressurize the fuel tanks. These fuel tanks are pressurized to ensure that as the fuels deplete, they are forced down to assure an even flow into the engines. Fuel tanks are now being pressurized. The S4B, or third stage liquid oxygen tank, has just been pressurized, and the second stage liquid oxygen tank has been pressurized. As we move down through the count at the T-minus 17 second mark, we'll get a release of the guidance system in the instrument unit. Also handled by the automatic sequencer will be the release of swing arms number 1 and number 2. The ignition of the Saturn V engines, the first stage 5 engines, will take place at 8.9 seconds in the countdown. 8.9. The engines will, or the vehicle will then be held down until we build up to 7.7 million pounds of thrust. At the T-minus 3-minute mark, tape recorders on board the spacecraft were turned on. These recorders record both voice and data. Spacecraft now to full internal cooling. The cooling load has been shared with the ground cooling. T-minus 90 seconds and counting. T-minus 90 seconds and counting. At T-minus 1 minute 15 seconds, the spacecraft batteries will be turned on for launch. These batteries will give an additional power source to the spacecraft, as well as be acting as a backup for the fuel cells. The third stage liquid hydrogen tanks now pressurized. All third stage tanks pressurized. Second stage tanks also pressurized. T-minus 1 minute, T-minus 1 minute and counting. Now moving into the final minute of the count. We'll be standing by for the switch over to internal power. Switch over taking place at this time, going on internal power. T-minus 45 seconds and counting. Guidance align just announced by John Young. That will be the last action taken by the crew aboard the spacecraft. T-minus 35 and counting. Countdown continuing to go well. T-minus 30. T-minus 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, guidance release, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. The engine's now building up to 7.7 million pounds of thrust. We have a launch commit and we have a liftoff. The swing arms moving back. The Saturn V lifting off the tower. Off the pad, building up thrust. We clear the tower.
Houston is now controlling.
Roll, you have good thrust in all 5. Roger.
Pitch and roll program started.
Roger.
16 now maneuvering to its proper flight path attitude. Mark 27 seconds.
And the sound is just beginning to hit us.
36 seconds. Roll program completed. Pitch profile still in progress. 40 seconds. Mark 50 seconds. Cabin pressure relieving. Adjusting now from sea level to a space environment. 2 nautical miles in altitude.
Stand by for mode 1 Bravo. Roger, Mark. 1 Bravo. Your feet wet now, 16. Roger.
That call up from Capcom Gordon Fullerton says Apollo 16 now capable of water landing. Mark 1 minute 12 seconds, coming up on period of maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
They're already over the speed of sound.
1 minute 22 seconds, 6 nautical miles in altitude, looking good. Mark 1 minute 30 seconds, 8 nautical miles in altitude. Mark 1 minute 41 seconds. Pass through max Q, still looking good.
Through max Q and everything looks good.
The period of maximum pressure on the spacecraft, max Q.
Miles in altitude. Young Duke Mattingly moving out to the outer traces of the Earth's atmosphere.
Stand by for mode 1 Charlie. Roger, we're Mark 1 Charlie.
Mark 2 minutes 3 seconds. A status check and mission control by Flight Director Gene Kranz. A go, no go for staging. Coming up on center engine shutdown.
Center engine shutdown.
You're aboard, you're go for staging.
Ready for staging any...
Shutdown on time. 2 minutes 28 seconds, 26 nautical miles in altitude, 32 nautical miles downrange.
10 seconds to shutdown. separation.
2 minutes 35 seconds.
Should really see it blow.
2 minutes 40 seconds coming up on staging.
And there she goes. The crowd here cheering.
Ignition on the S2. Roger.
2 minutes 53 seconds. A normal staging. Young Duke Mattingly now riding on 5 good second stage engines.
Go on all 5 on the S2.
3 minutes 2 seconds. The giant first stage falling away now. It's a day's work completed. Apollo 16.
8 seconds to when the launch escape tower goes.
Nautical miles downrange. Coming up on skirt sep and tower jettison.
Ground time. Roger. Tower jettison.
The tower's gone.
Roger, and we confirm your skirt sep. You're mode 2 now. Roger, mode 2.
3 minutes 28 seconds.
We're already at 330,000 feet.
It's surveillance role no longer required.
5,600 miles an hour and about 100 miles downrange away from us.
CMC is go. Roger.
Mark 3 minutes 45 seconds. Apollo 16 now 62 nautical miles in altitude, 135 nautical miles downrange. Apollo 16 now 33 feet shorter and 9,000 pounds lighter.
Those men there in the firing room,
now for its mission
watching every single figure for any sign of malfunction at this stage.
Everything looks great down here. Everything looks good up here, too.
And everything looks great, a report there.
Just gorgeous.
Mark 4 minutes 10 seconds. 70 nautical miles.
Look at that water going on the pad I was telling you about before. 40,000 gallons a minute, cooling the pad down from the effect of that tremendous jet of flame as they lifted off there. Up about 400,000 feet, still going, no report of anything wrong at all.
Seconds and mission control trajectory data driving right down the middle of our plot boards as expected. Right now, flight path data is go.
Right down the middle. What a tremendous liftoff that was.
Mark 4 minutes 45 seconds, 76 nautical miles in altitude, 220 nautical miles downrange.
The speed now increased up to around 6 or 6,500 miles an hour. Only about 1/6 of the fuel left. They've already used 5/6 of that fuel getting up to where they are at the moment. 5 minutes and 10 seconds
Mark,
into launch.
5 minutes 10 seconds. Still good performance on all 5 second stage engines.
Over 500 miles away downrange now, well out of the sight of any camera that we could possibly track it with. You can see the
second stage
pall of steam coming up there from that launch pad.
16 Houston, times are nominal. Level sense will be 8 + 3, 7, and cut off.
Times are nominal. Everything seems to be going okay.
Roger.
Absolutely perfect flight.
Mark 5 minutes 40 seconds. Another status check.
All seems to be going absolutely perfectly for a good orbit. And we'll be here until after they start out to the moon 2.5 hours from now. If anything goes wrong, of course, we'll report it to you. Off to Houston then for the rest of the mission. So from us at Cape Kennedy, after a beautiful, perfect launch of Apollo 16, good evening.
Up on 6 minutes with Capcom Gordon Fullerton reporting that 16 capable of reaching a minimum orbit with a good third stage and service module engines. We're at 6 minutes 8 seconds. Apollo 16, 88 nautical miles.
London, thank you very much. This is Dick. Those cues sounding wonderful. Well done.
The shots.
Mark 6 minutes 30 seconds. Velocity now reading 14,880 feet per second. Altitude 90 nautical miles for Apollo 16. Downrange distance 440 nautical miles.
Stand by for S4B to orbit.
Well, all right, fair enough. But offering schmoffering, you know, we only work here, baby. We don't know from Adam what's going to happen.
Seconds.
Delta 40. Roger, Charlie.
Young Duke Mattingly now told that they can reach orbit if given a good third stage. Mark 7
Well,
minutes,
well done, all.
91
I know it's a
nautical
sweat,
miles
and you've got the
altitude,
thankless
496
task, and we saw a
nautical
wonderful
miles
launch.
downrange.
Jeff wants a word with you about this circuit. But well done, London. Thank you very much.
Mark,
Hello.
7 minutes 15 seconds.
Is
16
that somebody want to
flying
talk to me? I
almost
think
parallel with the
you
ocean
had a
now with
problem,
young crew
or there was a
pitched
problem
down
with sound
position.
quality, so I hear.
Really moving out now for downrange distance. We show
Okay.
Apollo 16
Okay, thank you, Tom.
551 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 17,527 feet per second. coming up on center engine shutdown.
Roger, inboard.
Center engine shutdown on time, 7 minutes, 50 seconds, 92 nautical miles in altitude, 620 nautical miles downrange. Still showing stable thrust on the other 4 engines. They've got about a minute to go in burn time remaining.
16 at 8 minutes, looking good here.
Hello, is anybody there?
Mark,
Hello, is
8
anybody
minutes,
there?
25 seconds.
16, you're still
Hello,
on the
Londinium.
shift. Bus looks good, and you're go for staging.
Roger.
8 minutes, 35 seconds. Apollo 16 now 93 nautical miles in altitude, 756 nautical miles downrange.
Full sense arm now.
Roger.
That terse response from Apollo 16 Commander John Young.
Hello,
we're at,
London.
8 minutes, 52 seconds.
Who am I speaking to?
Apollo 16 now 807 nautical
Who,
miles
sorry?
downrange, 92 nautical
Oh,
miles in
Brian.
altitude.
Brian, can you
Velocity
tell me
now reading,
about the sound, please?
21,642 feet per second.
Well, sweetheart, we're not getting a clean feed from you, so it may be coming back that way.
Stand by for mode 4.
Well, no, we've
capability.
been hearing.
Mark,
No, I
you're
haven't
mode
got
4
time on
now.
here, James. We've been hearing all along James coming back with the echo. Now, it shouldn't get onto Mike. It would probably have got onto the Electro voice he was using when he was doing the unilateral,
10 minutes,
or
30
it could have
seconds.
done.
Good on the S4B.
Because we were trying to feed his ear at quite high level because he was, not in very good listening conditions
Saturn
out there.
stages on the way to orbit. We see
Now,
good
what about
performance on the third
I
stage,
hear
the
that,
S4B.
I don't know what it was,
That,
but somebody
mode
says
4
there was
report
a
says
problem in
Apollo
quality.
16
There was
can
one
achieve
stage
orbit
where somebody
on
was trying to persuade me to
spacecraft
change a
power
mic, which I don't
9
think was
minutes,
the problem.
50 seconds. Apollo 16, 93 nautical miles in altitude, 1,011 nautical miles downrange.
Well, I honestly, Brian, don't think it was here. I mean, I'm listening on very indifferent quality cans, but I didn't detect anything of that sort. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, I mean, can you be a little more specific? I mean, was it an echo like a satellite echo, a half-second round loop echo, or was it just? Oh Jesus! I've just realised what it sounds like. What you're describing sounds like. It sounds like the problem we have, even out of New York, every time we have a bloody B circuit. Was it a kind of a sort of tendency towards instability on peaks? That's the bloody thing. Jesus Christ! We've had. Right through Nixon in China, we had this problem on all our B circuits out of New York. God in heaven, give me patience with these bloody carriers. I hope they're listening. There was one day in that China thing when we had 4 B circuits in the day, and every one had the same bloody fault on it. I think at one time it was nailed down, if anybody in AT&T is listening, to something between NR and White Plains. But you say this was incoming like it to NR. I doubt, I don't quite know how they know that. When I first heard there was a problem, I got the guy who I've been dealing with in NR on the line, and he didn't seem to know there was a problem, so I don't know how they found out it was incoming to NR. Barrett, are you still on the line in NR? Can you join this conversation at all? Were you not? Well, I know you expected it, but I think we did stress that you should stay with the commentary circuit as your prime source. That was dependent on Poole taking my input and fading it up, which I guess they didn't do. They were told to, but they obviously didn't. I'll go and give them a bollocking for that. Barrett, are you there in NR in New York? I did ask them to put it on a speaker, but it sounds as if they're not there. Our British Post Office across the line, Dave. I mean, why don't we... you've still got the symptom now, have you? Sir Brian, you've still got the problem now, have you? You've still got the distortion that you were complaining of now? Okay.
if you still have, why don't we get British Post Office and AT&T on the line and try and thrash it out now? I see. Okay. Hello. You want to listen to James instead of me, do you? Okay. Okay, I mean, I can get you James. He's standing right here if you want to hear James, but I'm happy to read the script to you if that's good enough. Do you want me to keep on talking while you check, or can I... Okay, right, I'll try and persuade him to... Okay. James, would you be terrible?
This is James Burke giving London some voice so you can track down whatever you're tracking down. James Burke, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, testing a line from Cape Kennedy to the London studio. This is James Burke testing a line. I'm just about to stop testing a line, have a drink of 7-Up. Hold one. How'd you like that? James Burke testing a line between Cape Kennedy and London. It's a beautiful day out here, and I think we've finished.
Yes, Brian. Well, look, why don't we try and nail it right now? I don't seem to be in touch with AT&T, who I thought were going to be across this but aren't. So if you can get British Post Office to call up NR, then we can all get on it together. Okay, fine. I'm going to keep talking for the benefit of all interested parties trying to track down more quality on the transatlantic. Who's listening? Who's me? Tam. Yeah. You want to talk to Dick now? Is the quality now worse than it was when you were on the air, or was it terrible on the air too? Oh, Jesus. No. But it's terrible now, is it? Hold on, I'll give you Dick.
Release that, love. Tam, can you release this cable, love, from the chair? Well, nothing can happen till TLI, and when that happens, which is just over 2 hours from now, any broadcasting to be done will be done on a 50A, won't it? Well, that's fine. We'll just tell news that we're staying at the site, and when we move from the site, we'll again tell news. We have not been drinking, baby. We have been here since before 5 a.m., and we are a little hot and a little tired. Whoa, rhubarb. Maggie. We're certainly not drunk. That's one thing we're not.
Hello, BBC.